Hi, I'm Dylan Little with the Mid-Continent Public Library, and welcome to the 2020 Veteran Salute Digital Commemoration. In December of 2019, the Veteran Salute Planning Committee committed to honoring the 70th anniversary of the start of the Korean War.
They've been involved in the program a lot longer than I've been around. The Korean War Veterans Association, they really were the core group.
Right.
And everything else was kind of built off of them.
Their whole organization supported this event. Not that everybody else didn't, but they were such a huge voice in helping us.
We hope that you will join us as we turn our attention to the stories of a handful of Kansas City area Korean War veterans as they share their experiences in the service. My name is Dylan Little. I'm with the Mid-Continent Public Library. The Veteran Salute event's been here for 25 years, and this year we made a decision to honor Korean War veterans. So hopefully we have a good conversation, and if you could share your name and your branch of service and your current residence.
Okay, I'm a veteran of the United States Army. I joined the Army when I was 17 years old.
My name is Sergeant First Class E7, retired Johnny W. Cheatham.
My formal name is Bernard Brownstein. All my friends call me Bernie. Now, if you're not my friend, don't bother to call. I'm going to be 90 years old at the end of this year. I don't know how the hell I got here.
So were you born and raised in Pleasant Hill?
I was born down there November 29, 1930,
And where were you when you enlisted?
here in Kansas City.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked at Sears filling retail store requisitions, and there was 5 of us that were doing it. 3 of them left. Well, that left the burden to the 2 of us, and it didn't appear like they were in any hurry to replace the 3.
Was that Sears location the big one that was on the east?
15th and Cleveland.
Yeah, that was the big.
That was it.
The
that
big
was the
one.
catalog, Sears and Ward's. So I showed them, by golly, on a Saturday. I went down to the Air Force recruiting office. The same Wednesday of the same week, my folks took me down to the Union Station.
You didn't put in your 2 weeks at Sears. You just said.
Heck, I showed them. I don't know what happened afterwards, because
Right.
that put them down to 1 retail store.
You live in Blue Springs now. When you enlisted when you were 17, were you living in Blue Springs at the time?
No, I'm a native of Ohio. I was a 16, 17-year-old teenager. I got me a job at the local theater running the movie projectors. I kind of got influenced by the wrong people.
Yeah.
And thankfully, a big local cop took me to the side one time. He says, "George," he says, "I've been watching you, and you're a pretty good kid, really. But he said, you're running with the wrong people." And he says, "You better kind of start choosing your friends a little different."
Right.
And I told him, I said, "There was a poster for the U.S. Army outside the theater." And I said, "Well, I've been looking at that poster out there and thinking about joining then.
Yeah.
Because if I joined then, I was 17 years old, I could retire when I was 37. Well, that sounded kind of
Yeah.
appealing. So I decided, well, why not do it? So
Right.
I signed up, and the rest of it's history.
No, I was 11 years old when I left Texas during the Pearl Harbor War. Me and my brother, mother, and sister rode the train from Paducah to all the way to San Diego, California. And the sailors and soldiers was on that train.
Do you remember the moment you decided to join?
Well, what happened, a young man, a friend of mine, I used to run the track and play football for the San Diego Boys Club, and he told me, said, "Cheatham, you ought to join the National Guard." And he enticed me to go in the National Guard.
So in 1952, I finished my education in January of '52 at Seton Hall. The graduation ceremony took place in June of '52. I got engaged in July of '52, Got married in October of 52. On the 19th of October, and December 4th, I was in the Army.
Wow, that is a busy.
That was a
That's
busy
an
year.
action-packed year. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
No, I was drafted. I say I went in kicking and screaming.
So you started in '49, is that?
I enlisted in March of '49.
I went in the National Guard 1948. I was 17 years old. It was all black outfit, all 1402nd Engineer Battalion.
When you enlisted at the age of 17, did your parents have to sign a?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
A consent form.
Back in 1950, President Truman called all the National Guard in during the Korean War. We came in, the outfit came in, they told me to get out because I had too much time in the National Guard. So they made me a staff sergeant, E5 at 19 years old.
What do you remember about that first day of training or heading into training the first time?
My dad dropped me off at the induction center in Newark. My dad never cried, never saw any emotion. But I think at that point, he still had a 1941 Buick Special, 4-door sedan with 3 on a tree. And he dropped me off and he made a big U-turn on Broad Street. And I could see him doing this, wiping his eyes. First time I ever saw my dad have tears in his eyes.
My folks took me down to the Union Station. There's all these young guys running around there, and we all get on the old Katy, go down to Lackland. We got there the next night about 7 o'clock. They take us over to the fun house. We go in, the Mexican barbers are jabbering and they're cutting our, shortening our hair considerably. Follow the red line, go through, you go by and you get a shot in each arm. Go on up, stick your hand under there and they get blood for a blood test. And they take us down to the 3702nd Squadron. It was empty. And we were the first ones to fill a barracks. It's World War II barracks, Upper Bay and Lower Bay. And about 4:30 the next morning, Sergeant Rolanitis, little short, heavy-set Italian, said, get up. And our arms are sore, and we're all volunteers. They said, what the hell did we do?
Do you remember much about your instructors in boot camp?
By name, no. I remember one that I thought he was picking on me and I didn't like it, so they took me out behind the barn and told me what the things was like. And
Yeah.
after that, I straightened out. I did what they say, yes sir, how high, and the rest of it. So we ran everywhere you went. You did not walk. If you
Right.
walked, you got 25 push-ups that quick.
Then you run the obstacle course, get on your back with a gun, a rifle, if you don't call it a gun anymore.
Right.
Because they'll have you run around the barrack, this is my rifle, this is my gun. But we'd crawl on your back with the gun on your chest and on the barbed wire, and machine guns firing over your head.
We just, in our push-ups out in the sand you learn to get your arms up, built up, because you don't want your belly you'd blister if you hit that hot sand.
Burn on the sand a little bit.
Then we got to the point where we would run with field packs. And they built us up to where we were, for being 18 years old, we could probably handle ourselves
Yeah.
without any trouble.
Were those field packs pretty heavy?
They were about 70 pounds, something like
Wow.
that.
When I'm finished with basic, I was called in for an interview. Oh, we're going to send you to Europe. You're going to be a locomotive engineer.
Was your education at Seton Hall engineering based?
Business management. After they told me that they're going to train me to be a locomotive engineer, but 2 days later they called me back in for another interview. What am I going to do there? You're going to be an airplane mechanic. Okay. That's what my aptitude test showed, that I could do mechanical things. I got on the phone. Hey, Gilda, guess what? They didn't tell you very much. And you know, you got to put yourself back in that time. There was no internet. There was no smartphone. You know, whatever your orders were pasted on a billboard right outside the barracks. Sometimes in the barracks, everybody's orders were there. You know, you went every day and you looked. You know, oh, there I am.
And when we got our orders, the schools that I put in for, they were all full, but radio school's open. I signed up. The orders came. They said Keesler Air Force Base, and they set it up in a couple of big old hangars. You start out learning the code, writing it with your pencil, and you're taking typing lessons. And when you get up to about 14 words a minute copying with a pencil, you're proficient enough on the typewriter that you switch over. But here's the mistake they made. All the code we receive is off of a tape. There's no static, you know.
Right.
We get online, I got overseas, got over there in Japan, and you guys got the fists. You got to back up to about 5 words a minute till you learn how to. Everybody's got their own way of doing it.
Right.
And you've been spoiled with this, just clear as can be.
Clear as a whistle.
And just, you know, it's just rattling right off.
Earlier you mentioned that you were a combat engineer.
Yeah, I've been a.
So were you working some in Germany and then went to Korea at a certain point, or working?
That's not the way it worked. See, my career, I was an athlete. I was run track in Fort Riley. I got to be the athletic director in the company.
You must have seen so many different athletes. Did any of the people that you competed against go on to play professional sports?
I don't know if you know Wilma Rudolph, heard of her. She was won the 100-yard dash as a woman. But Ralph Boston came down on the base to do an expedition. You know, they said, Ralph Boston here, Cheatham, you better go down there and see. You're a track star, go down and see what you can do. So what happened, he was the Olympic champion. He jumped 26 feet. When I went down there and jumped with him, I jumped 22 feet.
So world-class athletes, running into world-class athletes in your time in the service.
But we need to talk about this, my career. I tell you what, I am a combat engineer. I'm also airborne. I was in the 82nd Airborne. I got about 200 jumps out of an airplane. You had to make a jump every month to get paid. You have to jump. It was $55 extra back then.
Well, we were all airborne qualified, which was jump school. Out of the 300 and some odd graduates that went with us, I think 240 of us went straight to the infantry. It was a combination bus ride, train ride. Then they processed us, put us on a boat, and away we went.
Do you remember when you found out you were heading to Japan?
When we finished radio school, we took the ship, the General Daniel I. Sultan, and since I was a radio operator, I was on the ship's newspaper.
To pass the time, you mentioned that you would read the newspaper. Do you remember what newspaper?
It was Stars and Stripes.
Right. And would that come out daily or weekly?
No, when you could get it.
When you could get it. You mentioned that a lot of the other soldiers were seasick. Was the water choppy on the...
Right. I didn't get seasick. I stood mid-deck and looked at the bow. And that bow would go up in the air, you didn't see anything. And then it would come down and you see horizon. And it would go up and you didn't see anything. And that's why guys got seasick. That thing was really rocking. And also, we slept in racks, you know, just a canvas on a couple of pipes. And we were racked up 5 high.
How much space between you and the next guy?
Enough that you could turn over. You could hardly sit up. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed strictly for sleeping.
You went on shore at Yokohama?
Well, we got a 12-hour pass, and since I didn't have any duties, I got to go ashore. We got off the ship, went through Camp Drake. That was where we traded our state money for scrip.
You know, you couldn't use American dollars. You didn't have American greenbacks. You had military scrip. And periodically, they would change that scrip because it always wound up and got traded on the black market. I'll never forget one day I was off post. We had a big cyclone fence that went around the area. There were hundreds of people waving money, sticking it through the cyclone fence. They wanted to trade it, 10 for $1
Wow.
for a greenback.
Did you have close friends in your time in the service?
Oh yeah, we had drinking buddies, you know.
I've never heard about the good beer that was
There
over
was
there.
a Nippon and a Sia was the two different brands, the blue label and the red label. I liked the Japanese beer because my dad made home brew back in the 30s, and it reminded me of home. They sold it in a big brown 2-quart bottle, and you didn't have a hangover.
Wow.
You know, I guess the alcohol content wasn't that great. But anyway, it was good. And you could buy it in the club for 10 cents a bottle. So why buy that canned beer from the States that'll give you a headache when you can buy twice as much for a dime, and you don't get a headache and you enjoy the flavor?
When you would get your sea rations, or were there particular things in that you liked more than others, or would you just have the sea rations enough where it all kind of tasted the same?
Well, the sea rations, as I recall, had candy bars in it, had a little can of corned beef hash. Some people like this and some people like that, and if you had something that somebody else liked, you could trade for it.
Right.
I think I had either 1 or 2 packs of cigarettes in it. And boy, I was the most popular guy when those came out. I was popular. Guys, you know, they had to have their cigarette.
Right. So would you trade cigarettes for
Usually,
candy bar? Or?
if it was somebody I really liked,
Here you go.
Here, I have mine, use nothing.
So on the way over, I volunteered. You never volunteer, but I volunteered to be ladder guard outside the kitchen, the mess hall. I ate well. I had no other duty. I didn't have to clean the latrine. I just stood there at the ladder hall for 3 meals a day and said, you can't use this ladder.
Did you go straight to Korea one stop, or did you have stopping off points on your way there?
Well, we went from Tokyo to Incheon. Then we got on a boxcar train run from Incheon to Chuncheon. And Chuncheon is where the 40th was in reserve then. We got assigned to them for about 3 weeks, and then the whole outfit moved up to the front lines, and we were on the front line the rest of the time I was out there.
So you make it over in, did you say 52, 53?
I got there in October 52.
When you got to the front lines, was combat like a part of that experience on a roll?
You was susceptible. You stayed in the trench,
Yeah.
you stuck your head up, you're allowed to get shot with a sniper.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't.
Were there times of the day that were particularly...
One thing that they had over there that, I don't know, most people I've never heard talk about, but they had these, they were real powerful searchlights. And they were mounted on top of the mountains way back behind the lines where their artillery couldn't reach them.
Yeah.
But they would shine over our heads and at the enemy's positions. And we had the benefit of the light. You spend on 3 hours on active duty out watching the trench. And you had to keep your eye on, because if they kept creeping up the hill, they'd get to where they'd toss a grenade in there. And
Right.
that was a problem. There's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
Oh, I bet.
I think the war was over in North Korea and South Korea in 1954. But 1960 was just peacetime. I didn't do too much but support But one day I took a Jeep and went and looked all over these mountains where it was pretty. It's like Utah.
Right.
And a sniper shot a bullet that missed my head 2 inches. I could have been dead. So
Were you able to figure out where the sniper fire was coming from?
I didn't try to find out.
Right.
I got in my Jeep and took off because I would have been dead. They don't care. They killed a lot of people in peacetime over there.
We had what they call comma wire. It's a real fine wire that we'd run along there, and we had not radio, it was telephone contact, I guess you could say. And that's how we got orders from each other, from the platoon sergeant right on down the line to us. One of the favorite tricks of the communists was they'd infiltrate the lines. They'd find these lines and they'd snip them.
Snip them.
And then they'd hide a sniper up there in the woods, and then when you come out to fix the line, then they'd start shooting at us.
When I enlisted in the Air Force, the only thing I had in basic of clothes that would indicate I was Air Force was a collar button that had a propeller on it. Everything else was khakis, had brown shoes. You know, the Air Force had just been 47, been started, and they hadn't even decided what color what the clothes would look like or anything. And I was over in Japan before I got my blues issue, my actual Air Force color clothes.
In the 18 months, you get there and it's steaming hot. In the wintertime, what type of weather did you?
Froze your ass off. It was known as the Frozen Chosen. The Chosen Valley, the Chosen Reservoir, our troops had a terrible time up there in the winter. They'd freeze their ass off.
Earlier you said the names of the different, did you say Sandcastle Hill and then Pillow?
It's a mountain, and Sandcastle is what it was called.
Yeah.
And the Punch Bowl.
So you would go from Sandcastle to the Punch Bowl? Were the bunkers that you were rotating?
They're all in between. There's continuous. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Heartbreak Ridge, Pork Chop Hill, all of those. They're all mountain ridges along the line. Each one of them has its own history, I guess you'd call it. And there were some pretty bloody battles on them. I know this is the ridge on the Punch Bowl. This is up on the ridge, and you're looking across the valley on the Punch Bowl, and this is a mountain range on the other side.
Was there heavier fighting at either one of those locations?
Not as publicized as Heartbreak Ridge and Pork Chop Hill and all them. Mainly, I guess, because we didn't lose as many men.
Korea was 20 below zero. I'm gonna tell you, we had to wear Mickey Mouse boots. I got them at home now. It just created a lot of hard work. You just didn't go out. You didn't go out too much in that cold weather. You had to have a parka, you had to have gloves on, Mickey Mouse boots.
Now, I had to maintain my airplane, and we didn't have a hangar to get it into. Everything was outside. So we had these heaters, kerosene-driven heaters, that were called Herman Nelson heaters. And they were like a long tube, and it was blowing hot air wherever you wanted it. And when we had to work on a plane, they did issue us parkers. We'd put a strap around the Herman Nelson heater, get it under the parker, and tie it around our waist, and it's blowing hot air right up our behind. But it allowed us to work outside a little longer. The only thing was your hands.
Your hands. So if the bunker has 4 folks, would there be, drop off of supplies after a certain number of days or weeks?
No, I don't remember how we worked that, but sometimes they would have someone just drop off we was on sea rations, so they come in boxes. They'd drop off 1 box a person, and that box would probably last you a couple of days. And another day they'd come on and drop some more. And
Koreans slept in the barracks over there with a few of them with the troops. They'd eat that kimchi, and when they go to sleep, and them troops smell like kimchi, in the snow, they'll take the bunk while they sleep and set them outside.
How did you stay in touch with Gilda while you're
Well,
abroad?
mail took forever. It was really snail mail. It would take maybe 2 months to get to me. So I told Gilda I could use a sweater and some cookies and maybe a nice kosher salami.
Oh, yeah.
So she decided she would knit a sweater for me. Well, when I got it, it was a very nice sweater, but the houseboy got it because it didn't fit me. It was too small. And I was thin then.
Yeah.
I was 130 pounds.
Wow.
The cookies came, and they were Toll House cookies with a little bit of cookie crumb attached to each little nugget and got all broken up.
Right. Now I'm curious about the salami.
And now the salami, I told everybody I'm getting a kosher salami, and everybody wanted a taste. It was wrapped in paper over tin foil over the salami. Peeled it all off, it was green.
Oh, no.
Well, one of the guys had a nice chef's knife,
Yeah.
and we got rid of the green all around. Just stood it up like this,
Yeah, like a gyro. You slice it.
and the core of the salami was still good,
Oh,
and we all enjoyed that very much.
wow.
Well, while I was there, Japanese contractors came down and they built quarters up along the flight line, got us out of the...
Was that better than the Quonset huts?
Why, you better believe it. On one end of it, they put a soda fountain, just like back home. Even had a popcorn machine. Now, what do you think of that? And on the end of this new building, they painted it all white. They put chairs out here, and that's where the movies shine on that end of that white end of that building. And you could buy a sack of popcorn, go out and watch the movie. We got movies over there before they ever came downtown Kansas
Really?
City, first run. Yeah, they came right out of Hollywood overseas.
Wow. What year did you come back to the States?
51, December 51. So my dad got me a 48 Chevy Fleet Line, had
Wow.
the factory visor on it and everything.
Wow.
So I got that car. I go into Fremont to tell Frank, I don't need your services anymore. Well, there was this young lady there, and she was going to go visit her sister down on quite a ways across town, Fremont. So I said, well, I got wheels out here. I'll take you down there. She'd been riding with me for almost 68
Wow.
years now.
Wow.
Her mom was a heck of a good cook. I discharged November 7th and got married December 14th.
when I got done with Korea, one of my buddies there, he lived in Holden, Missouri. Well, I couldn't go to Ohio on a weekend pass, but we can go to his house.
Right.
And so when I got discharged, I just stopped in there to say goodbye to everybody that I'd known, and his dad talked me into coming up to Bendix in Kansas City to see about getting a job.
So you just go to visit your friend Holden, and then you end up staying for 50, 70 years.
70 years.
How did you become involved with the Jewish War veterans? How did you connect with that group?
Oh, that, believe it or not, I never knew about them. My first wife, Gilda, passed away at age 52 from cancer.
I'm sorry.
And I met a nice young lady shortly thereafter, Sandy. So Sandy had developed cancer. And then when I'm taking Sandy in 2007 to the radiation place, because she had to get radiation treatments, while we're sitting in the office waiting for our turn, there's a couple sitting there, and we started talking. Yeah, I'm Jewish. Are you? Yeah, I'm Jewish
Right.
too. Are you a veteran? Yeah, I'm a veteran. Did you ever hear of the Jewish war veterans? I said, no, I never heard of them. Well, he said, come to one of the meetings. And I said, okay. And that got me in.
How did the Korean War Veterans Association come together? Was that one of the first chapters in the area then?
Well, it's the only chapter. Well, Kansas has a chapter. I don't know anything about their history, but ours started about 80-some. We had over 100 guys.
What year did you retire?
I retired in August '73.
When we first started talking, you mentioned all the different service organizations that you're a part of. You're coming up on 40 years Mason, 40 years
Yeah,
with
40 years
American.
of Mason and 40 years American Legion. I became the commander
Wow.
of Post 149.
How long were you the commander?
Which is a Buffalo. I was a commander for 2 years.
Wow.
I was one of the only ones that got 100% 2 years in a row.
When was your first year coming to the Veterans Salute Committee meetings? Has it been a couple years?
It's been probably roughly about 2
I've
years.
loved, the committee that comes together. You get to hear not just about people's experiences, but mission and service is continuing to this day in all kinds of different ways. And with this veterans event, this is our 25th year. And really, the Korean War veterans are one of the main reasons it's kept on as long as it has, because the committee gets together for planning a big chunk of the year. Been with the program now for 12 years. When was the first time you connected with the Korean War Veterans Association?
The first year.
Right.
They've been involved in the program every year that I've been involved, and a lot longer than I've been around.
They always made the time to show up. They showed up for the committee meetings. They showed up for the events. Lou Ramsey was a huge piece of that. I always relied on them, on John Rishley.
Right.
It's a lot of the other veterans. Are we doing this correctly? Are we saying this correctly?
Right.
And I think that's a great thing about this program, is that the people who it honors are having a voice in what the program actually is,
Right.
And what it does.
I'm very happy that we're not losing the focus, that this is about the vets and not about the library.
Why is it important that we're honoring the Korean War veterans this year?
This year is the 70th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean
Right.
War. So even if you were 18 years old
Right.
at that time, you're 88 in your late 80s.
Yeah.
Most Korean War veterans, I think, are in their 90s. So clearly it's the time to do it.
I'll be 91 years old in September. I've got Purple Heart, I've got the Bronze Star here, and I've got a lot of foreign medals. But God's been good to me, He's blessed me.
Well, my wife and I have been married for 64 years, and it's still going on.
So is the chapter have a connection with Korea where they send
Oh, the Korean people here, there's a big settlement of Korean people in the metropolitan Kansas City area. Every year they have a big feed, and they've given us a $500 donation. And I've got a statue at home with my name on it,
Wow.
and the American flag and the South Korean flag
Wow.
on it. Because you look at one of them satellite pictures of Korea, and the north's dark and the bottom's just like New York City or LA or somewhere.
Because that war is still on. It has
Right.
never been completed.
Right.
We're technically still at war with North Korea. So there was the creation of a North Korea and South Korea.
I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come share your story.
Yes, sir.